Hey everybody, my name is Gavin and I love horror. When I saw the trailer for Barbarian before a showing of The Black Phone back in June, I didn't think much of it. I thought the premise looked kind of cool and it was definitely neat to see Bill Skarsgård outside of the Pennywise makeup, but honestly, it wasn't a movie that was really on my radar. It wasn't until I saw a tweet by Edgar Wright, who of course directed Shaun of the Dead and a bunch of other great stuff. He tweeted out saying that it was one of the best films of the year and to go in completely blind and know as little as possible. With that kind of intrigue and the really good Rotten Tomato score, decided to check out Barbarian, and oh my god, I am so glad that I did because it turns out to be one of the best horror films of the year, if not the best. Let's get into it. As always, would love if you subscribe to this channel and leave a like for this video. Those things seem very small, but they really do help my channel get seen by the YouTube algorithm and helps my channel grow, so I greatly appreciate you doing those things. Also, I know a lot of reviews I do are pretty spoiler-filled. This is a spoiler-free review. So if you're wondering, is he gonna spoil things? I'm not. This is gonna be a spoiler-free review. I want you to be able to go in as blind as possible and just fully experience what I experienced last night in the theater, because Barbarian is absolutely incredible. Barbarian is the horror debut of sketch comedian Zach Kreger, who you might know from the sketch comedy troupe The Whitest Kids You Know. The movie opens with the simple premise of a double-booked Airbnb in a bad neighborhood. You've got Georgina Campbell playing Tess, and you've got Bill Skarsgård, Mr. Pennywise himself, playing Keith. This is a good premise on its own of like, oh no, she's gonna stay with a man she doesn't know. And this dread and tension really builds in the trailer. So you're like, this is gonna be a really tense movie of what's he gonna do? Also, casting Bill Skarsgård as somebody who may or may not be creepy is perfect, because I don't know how he is in real life. He's probably very nice, but also he could want you to float down here. Now, this premise could carry most short films and maybe some feature films, but it does seem to be a pretty shallow premise past the initial shock of, ooh, what creepy thing's gonna happen? Luckily, Barbarian somehow subverts all cliches and makes one of the most original, brutal, and just really engaging horror movies of the entire year. This has been a great year for mainstream horror. I know it feels like the past couple reviews I've done have just been saying, this could be the best horror movie of the year. But really, mainstream horror right now is in a really great place with movies like Prey and X, and even Orphan First Kill was a really good surprise. But Barbarian may be the best of them all, just with the amount of character development, the way the movie unpeels like an onion. There's so many layers to this movie that go beyond just the premise of a double-booked Airbnb. The first part of this movie is so tense and really builds and builds and builds until you really cannot take it anymore, to the point where when the scare finally happened, I screamed in the theater, and I never scream. Like, it was that scary, and every scare in this movie feels very earned. There's no cheap jump scares. Everything is at the end of a very long tension building process. And what I also like about the movie is that just when you think it's going one way, it totally shifts. There's a huge jump scare, and then there's a hard cut to something completely different, and you're left a little disoriented and wondering what's going on. I will say the movie is also very funny. You wouldn't expect a movie that is this terrifying, and even the trailer is super scary. But this movie has some genuinely funny parts, and that is all because Justin Long plays a character named AJ, who you don't know a lot about, but he has the funniest scene in the entire movie. And I love when you can seamlessly blend horror and comedy together. And you can definitely see that Zach Kreger having a comedy background in The Whitest Kids You Know. If you've never seen The Whitest Kids You Know, definitely check out some of their stuff on YouTube, because there are some absolute classic sketches. Highly recommend. Just type Whitest Kids You Know Abraham Lincoln, and that's all you need to know. But you can definitely say that Zach Kreger has a comedy background because he knows how to mix comedy and horror together. He knows the audience needs that tension release and that feeling of safety. I cannot stress this enough. The less you know about this movie going in, the more fun you're going to have. Like, I was looking through the IMDb page as I prepared for this review, and the IMDb page actually tells you too much just by looking at the cast list. So don't check out IMDb. If you've just seen the trailer, you should be okay. That's all I saw going in as well. So I kind of knew some things to expect, but this is a movie that was not given away completely by the trailer, which is something you don't see anymore. I feel now, if you watch a trailer, you've seen the movie act for act, and there's not much left to look forward to when you actually see the movie. This is not the case with Barbarian. They show enough in the trailer to get you intrigued, but there's still so many shocks, scares, and surprises in the movie that watching the trailer didn't ruin anything. The movie isn't perfect, and if you think about things a little too hard, then maybe you'll not like it as much, but the movie does try to explain any plot holes it may have in the movie, which I did appreciate them at least attempting to do. The only thing I didn't like, and again, this isn't really a spoiler because it's kind of in the trailer, there is this kind of ambiguity of if there is anything supernatural going on in the movie. You think it might be, but then it kind of says it's not. But then when you think about things, was certain parts supernatural? That's never actually explained, which is kind of a bummer. But if you have that small of an error in an otherwise really brilliant, creative movie, then there's not much else really bad to say about it. I will say this movie is incredibly well acted. Georgina Campbell and Bill Skarsgård have such great chemistry. Even when they're in their early tension building in the beginning of the movie, they are really well paired together, and I really enjoyed seeing Bill Skarsgård do something besides Pennywise. And I think the MVP of the movie is probably Justin Long, who brings the humor, and he brings a very layered and flawed character in his character of AJ. Definitely check out Barbarian. Go in as blind as you can. You're gonna have a great time. It's such a fun movie. It's got scares, it's got tension. Also, it has an absolutely incredible soundtrack. This movie does not work without the soundtrack and just the eeriness and the tension that the soundtrack builds. It's got some certain like very recognizable noises that you're gonna hear and be like, oh, that's gonna make me get shivers when I hear it years from now. That's how good it is. Like, the soundtrack for this is S tier as far as horror movie soundtracks go. And if you don't have a good soundtrack for a horror movie, you're probably not gonna have a good horror movie. So Barbarian definitely has that in spades. But what did you think if you've already seen Barbarian? Did you enjoy it? I've seen some people compare it to this year's Malignant, which I really loved Malignant, and a lot of people did not. I don't really know how apt that comparison is. I think they're both underrated horror movies that people got something different than what they were expecting. But overall, I love Malignant, I love this. If you didn't like Malignant, you might not like this, but I think Barbarian is gonna be remembered fondly for many years to come for being a very fun movie and for just how genuinely scary it is. But let me know in the comments below what you thought when you saw it, if you liked it, didn't like it. Also, what other horror movies are you looking forward to in 2022? Because we got a couple left in the year. We got Pearl coming out next week. Halloween Ends is around the corner. Let me know what else you are excited for in 2022. As always, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like for this video, and until next time, stay weird.